Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, or good evening. This is the third in the Back to Basics series, ladies and gentlemen. So this is Back to Basics Part 3. And today I thought I would take a little bit of a look at price elasticity of demand. And maybe in future Back to Basics sessions we will have a look at income elasticity of demand and cross-price elasticity of demand. So I think one of the key things about price elasticity of demand is being able to interpret what a PED number actually means. So we all know what PED measures, so it's the responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in its determinant, and in this case the determinant is price. And you'll all be familiar with the PED equation, price elasticity of demand, is equal to minus percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. Now I've indicated the minus sign in red there, ladies and gentlemen, because for pretty much most goods the price elasticity of demand outcome is always negative. And the reason for that, of course, is because of the shape of the demand curve. The demand curve slopes downwards from left to right. Well, why does that matter, I hear you ask? Well, if you get an increase in the percentage change in quantity demanded, so quantity demanded is moving in this direction, left to right, away from the 0 point, which we talked about in part 2. So that would be an increase in QD on the top line, but of course what would bring about that change? It would be a reduction in the price level. So you would have a negative on the bottom line because price is falling, and a positive on the top line because quantity demanded is rising. And as a consequence, the overall value, whenever you calculate this, would obviously be a negative number. Flip it around the other way. If price rises, so we have a positive number on the bottom line, what happens to quantity demanded? Quantity demanded then starts to move back in this direction towards the origin, so that's negative. So we've got negative over positive, and again that will give us a negative outcome. So that's the reason why these numbers are always negative minus signs. People find the interpretation of these numbers somewhat problematic on exam papers. This actual calculation here is fairly straightforward, and generally candidates don't have much problem with this. It's the actual interpretation. So if you're presented in the exam with some numbers for PED and then you're asked to say, well, what does this mean? That's when candidates are stumped, and so I want to help you over that hurdle. So we've got two values here. One is minus 0.2 and one is minus 4. So how would we go about then explaining and interpreting this for the purposes of whoever is marking your script? Well, I always tell my students to work on the basis of 10%. So what do I mean by that? Well, I've drawn this line, ladies and gentlemen, to indicate the something over something, the division in this instance, and we know in this case that it's equal to minus 0.2. Now what does that mean? Well, it means, and this is where the 10% rule comes in, if I were to increase 10%, if I had a 10% increase in price, bearing in mind that price is on the bottom line, what change would need to take place on the top line in order to give me an answer of 0.2? And obviously the answer is 2, but more than 2, it's a fall of 2%. Why is it a fall? Because as price rises, quantity demanded moves back in this direction towards the origin. So we would have a 2% fall in quantity demanded. Now you then think to yourself and to yourselves, well, how responsive is that? I've increased price by 10% and quantity demanded has only dropped off by 2%. And so as a consequence of that, the change in price as a proportion is much more significant than the drop-off in quantity demanded. And so this indicates to me that if I want to increase, for example, total revenue, and I knew that the price elasticity of demand for my product was minus 0.2, then the correct course of action for me would be to increase the price, because I know that quantity demanded is not very sensitive to a change in price. And so because the percentage change in price is greater than the percentage change in quantity demanded, then I'm able to, with quite some certainty, increase price, and I know that my revenues will increase. Now you will know that as being price inelastic in demand. And of course, how do we know that as a very quick general rule? Well, if we cover the minus sign here, we see the number 0.2. You know that if PED is greater than 1, it's elastic, but if it's less than 1, which 0.2 is, it's inelastic. And that's another very important thing, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, we cover the minus sign when we're saying whether or not it is price elastic or price inelastic. What about this one? Again, 10% rule. So, 10% increase in price. What would give us an answer of minus 4? So this one would have to be a 40% reduction in quantity demanded. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you're thinking to yourselves, that is very, very sensitive, isn't it? So I've only increased price by 10%, but demand drops off massively by 40%. So that, as you well know, is price elastic in demand. And again, how do we know? Cover the minus sign. 4, it's greater than 1, so therefore it's price elastic. And this one is very price elastic, very price sensitive. So in this instance, we would anticipate that if a firm operating under these conditions increased its prices, total revenue would drop off very significantly. And so obviously the way in which a firm in this scenario would increase its total revenue would be to decrease prices, because that would bring about a very significant increase in quantity demanded. So, you know, think of it the other way. So if you start with a 10% fall in price, in order to get the answer of minus 4 again, demand would have to go up by 40%. So if you reduce prices, demand will grow very significantly, thereby expanding your total revenue. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the 10% rule, and that's the way, or certainly one good way, of interpreting PED values. I'll see you again next week with Back to Basics Part 4. Bye for now.